back again. I genuinely thought, given the way that the offseason had started with us essentially doing nothing for a month, following exit interviews, that news wouldn't be coming so, quickly and with great frequency out of our organization. And yet, no sooner had I clicked upload on my Bruce Cassidy video did I find out that we had gone and done a thing. And that thing in question being sending forward Evgeny Dodonov to the Montreal Canadiens in exchange for Shea Weber. Now, I saw that tweet and I'm like, wait a second, we can't afford that. I know Weber's a great defenseman, but we can't afford that. And then I read that he's going to be on LTIR for the rest of his career. So thank you, Bill Foley. You get to foot the bill for a player that we'll never, ever use in exchange for getting rid of a player that we were using pretty well. What that does, aside from take away from last season 20 goals and 43 points in the 73 games that Dodonov played with us last year, 78 games that he played with us, it frees up the $5 million in cap space that we, as a cap-strapped team, so desperately needed. Nothing against Dodonov. He was an incredible player for our team, and he really went through a lot, especially in the tail end of the season. But this trade has been forecast since the deadline. We knew this was going to happen. We tried to move on from him at the deadline, but we didn't do our homework, or Ottawa didn't do their homework, or Anaheim didn't do their homework, or Dodonov's agent didn't do his homework. Point is, that trade wound up being voided, and the trade that would have sent players and money our way in exchange for Dodonov and a second round pick of ours to Anaheim wound up getting voided, and he played out the remainder of the season with us and played particularly well given the circumstances. But I'm sure he, like all of us in the fan base, knew that his time in Vegas was numbered, and that this move is not in any way surprising. So the $5 million in cap space that he gives us, or that him leaving for Montreal gives us, allows us to do one of two things. The first of which being, it gives us enough money to essentially sign Riley Smith to his exact same contract right now for the foreseeable future, or at least for another year until Dodonov's money would have come off the books anyway, because he would as entering UFA status next year. So I guess if we weren't going to trade him now, we were going to trade him at the deadline this coming season. So really, he wasn't going to play more than 60 games with us left to begin with. But the important thing is that gives us, one, enough money to re-sign Riley Smith, who I think is one of the lifebloods of this organization, and he's one of our identity players. As I hammered home in my Cassidy video and talking about Foley and his need to have an identity in a team that he owns, Riley Smith being one of the original players, part of the misfit line with Carlson and Marchessault, shows that he's an identity player, really good when it comes to defensive management, and he produces offensively as well. He just, had an injury-shortened season like basically everybody in the top six last year. So it's really hard to know what his value is. My guess is if he's going to get re-signed, which this trade indicates that he might, his rate will be slightly suppressed, somewhere in the upper threes, low fours. But even if it winds up being a copy and paste of his old contract with the team, this move by our management allows that move to happen and be able to be facilitated. The only side effect of doing that, re-signing Smith 1-to-1 for what he currently is making, is that it leaves a couple of questions for our incoming restricted free agents, being Nick Hague, Nick Waugh, Keegan Colasar, and Brett Howden. Now, all those players I just listed are bottom six and second pair defensemen, or bottom six forwards and second pair defensemen. Like, they're incredibly good. Nick Hague had an incredible year. Brett Howden, despite being short and having a season cut down by injury, was really impressive in the 20 some odd games he played, and I think he's one of the best options we have on our fourth line. Keegan Colasar being a big physical guy, he's fun to watch. We need a little bit of sandpaper, especially on our fourth line. So putting him on a line with Howden makes a lot of sense, and I'm sure none of them are really due for a huge pay raise. The ones that I'm more concerned about is Nick Waugh, him busting onto the scene, having an incredible year. We know he's worth a lot more than what he was getting paid last year. So he's going to be asking for a pay raise similar to Nick Hague on the blue line. They're both going to be wanting a little bit more money. My guess is that Hague will probably make White Cloud money, so somewhere in the upper ones, low twos for an extended period of time. I just bumped my camera. I'm a dumb. But The problem with those figures is that if we re-sign Smith to that contract, it creates a bit of a cap crunch again that we tried to avoid. Hence why the second thing that this money does is it gives us the opportunity to not worry about all of our RFAs, but then have to make a move to re-sign Smith. So really now the ball's in the court of the agents and the upper levels of management, because there's really no way to know which way we're going to go until we either re-sign Haig or Waugh or Howden or Colasar to X amount of money, or until we come to terms on a new contract with our only UFA and Riley Smith. Both bringing back all the players in question is a big thing that everybody wants. There's obviously mutual interest to come back between Smith's representatives and our representatives as a team. And we like to avoid Haig and Waugh getting offer sheeted this offseason. I know offer sheets don't happen very often, but if the cost is only to pay them $4.2 million and give us a second round pick, any team that is looking for second pair defenseman depth or middle six forwards would be almost dumb to not take that opportunity. So really we have to act somewhat quickly, especially as free agency is coming up in a month. But it's really impossible to tell. I really didn't think we'd be doing anything, hence why I bookended my Bruce Cassidy video the way I did, saying that not a lot's going to happen between now and then, but look at me, I'm wrong. In terms of Shea Weber, his story's kind of sad. He's got 4 years left at $7 million a year, and he's essentially being paid to not play. The injuries in last postseason and over his career have really taken a toll. So I guess he gets to be exiled to our equivalent of Robitaille Island. I don't know. We've never really done this before. We don't really take on money except for, David Clarkson from back in the day, especially in that inaugural season. But it's kind of a sad story, but his career, I wouldn't go out and buy a Vegas Shea Weber jersey because he won't be lacing them up anytime soon. And if he is coming out of retirement at $7 million a year against the cap, we would be in quite dire straits, not too dissimilar to where we were last year. But I think that this is simply the start of what's going to be a busy couple of weeks in the lead up to free agency. I doubt we're going to want to leave a lot of things up to question, especially with a new coach coming into town wanting to get some stability and knowing what his roster is going to look like. So I wouldn't be surprised if this isn't the first trade that we make this week, let alone it's not the only trade we make in the coming week and a half, even before the end of the Stanley Cup final, which has been just a mess to this point. Because, for the first time in 3 years, the right teams made it, except for Colorado not having to play us in the finals, which is what everybody had penciled in at the start of the year. But, we can't exactly go back and rewrite history. We can't uninjure all of our players. So, yeah, just the move makes a lot of sense. Sending Dodonov to Montreal. Montreal needed to get rid of Weber's contract. We needed to dump money to be able to bring back the players that we deem are more essential to the core. And so now it's just deciding whether we prioritize locking up Smith to a deal or whether we prioritize locking up our RFAs, and then seeing what we can do with Smith, whether we have to make another move or whether we're going to let him walk in free agency in a month. So all of that's going to be made abundantly clear, and I'll keep making content as things happen. But until then, it's just going to be playing a waiting game, checking Twitter, seeing what the rumblings are out of Vegas and out of every other team, and just see what happens on the run up to free agency, which is going to lead us into the preseason pretty quickly. Big things are happening. We went from a month of silence to 2 major announcements in 4 days. So hopefully they continue this trend, because it'll be a really fun summer if we're getting news every couple of days. So yeah, I'm going to keep my ear to the ground, see what I see, hear what I hear, read what I read, and I'll keep you guys updated. It'll be a fun time. Hopefully stuff happens before free agency. We will find out together.